and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason in Old Town Florissant, Missouri. Florissant, which literally translates to the Valley of Flowers in French, is one of the oldest towns here in the state of Missouri. It is, in fact, the most populated place in St. Louis County, as well as one of the most populated in St. Louis City, like in the metro area. But I'm going to take you on a little walk, and it's almost about a mile long, maybe 3/4. I'm going to be taking you down the main drag of Old Town Florissant, showing you at least 20 plaques. There are 60 plaques that talk about notable Florissant people, past and present, dating all the way back to the beginning. We're talking about pioneers, business owners, 2 U.S. presidents, a lot of civic leaders, war heroes, you name it. These are the people that made Florissant great and for many years to come. And this is also a special one for me because I at one time was an intern for the city of Florissant. I worked in the building behind me, which is a government building. I worked for the media department for one summer. That was back in 2007. Great times that summer. And a year later, Mayor Robert Lowery, who was mayor at the time, he had the idea of making a walk of fame for the city of Florissant. He's like, well, Florissant has so much history to it, we need one too. He was, of course, inspired by the Hollywood Walk of Fame in Hollywood, California, and the St. Louis Walk of Fame, which is on Del Mar Boulevard. And I know at least 2 people who are enshrined here. Well, I didn't really know them that well, but I got to meet them during my time here working at Florissant. And one other thing, in order to make this, besides having something to do with Florissant, you have to be deceased to have a plaque. So there's nobody living that are enshrined on here, but maybe for the right reasons. But I'm going to go ahead and start the tour. Here we go. So right at the intersection of New Florissant Road and St. Francis is the guy that started Florissant. Here's his name. He was born in Canada in 1752, died in Florissant September 13th, 1825. Commissioned by the Spanish governor as the military and civil commandant of the village of St. Ferdinand de Florissant throughout the Spanish regime. Often described as a man of honesty and integrity who shaped and guided the little settlement of Florissant in its earliest days. So very fitting. And by the way, this was put here in a big ceremony on August 23rd, 2008. So yes, that was definitely the first one. Again, there are 60 plaques here, and yes, again, that's the building I worked at. Hasn't changed very much. And now for Florissant's first mayor. He was a descendant of Joseph Beauchamp. I'm sorry, I'm very poor at pronouncing French, but he was in Florissant as early as 1799. In 1857, when the Missouri State Legislature changed Florissant's form of government from trusteeship to mayor-council, he became the first mayor under the special charter. So here's to this gentleman. And I really do not want to play favorites. I mean, there are 60 plaques here, but, you know, I don't want this video to be very lengthy, but I know a lot of you who are watching this video who live in Florissant or are familiar with this may criticize me for leaving a lot of people out, and I don't blame you, but I'll show you some very interesting ones as I move along this road. And here's another interesting person. Charles Costello lived from 1839 to 1893, elected 27 times to the office of mayor. He served from 1865 to 1890, and then again from 1892 to 1893, dying in office. He helped to bring the West End narrow gauge railroad to Florissant, and under his leadership, Florissant offered land and $10,000 if it were made the county seat, which of course did not happen. That went to Clayton, Missouri, by the way. While Charles remained in Florissant, his father, who is believed to have been the first Republican sheriff of St. Louis County, traveled to Colorado, settling there and giving the name of his hometown to Florissant, Colorado. Charles was chairman of the St. Louis County Democratic Committee from 1888 to 1892, and a street in Florissant has been named for him. And now we're moving to City Hall. That is the building, constructed in 1970. Had been there many times, mostly for city council meetings and videotaping them. But in front of there is one by Joseph Peters, who lived from 1832 to 1913, a founder of the first bank in Florissant and of the Florissant Canning Factory. He owned the Joseph Peters Furniture Company in St. Louis. He has been described as one of the industrial builders of St. Louis. His home stood on the grounds of the 1970 City Hall, and he is responsible for many of its beautiful trees. And that is that historic house right there, just across the street. Here's another great one. John Malanphy, born 1758 in Ireland, died in St. Louis September 29th, 1833. It has been said one man's name towers above all others as a giant among the great men in North County's past. When Missouri became a state, he offered to build the state house at his own expense if Florissant were made the capital. He founded the first hospital west of the Mississippi and paid 1/6 of the cost of building St. Ferdinand's Church. He acquired Taille d'Onoyer, which is a historical building off of 270 by Hazelwood High School in 1804, and his descendants lived there until 1961. He is also known as, on side note, he is also known as St. Louis area's first millionaire. So yeah. And here's a little nice front view of the City Hall. Here's one of two people that I've actually got to meet in person, and this was who I mentioned earlier, Robert G. Lowery Sr., who was the mayor. He passed away in 2018. Before he was mayor, he was the police chief from 1979 to 2001, and mayor from 2001 to 2011. Bob Lowery began his 50-year career service to Florissant residents as a patrolman in 1961, advancing to chief in 1979, and excelling in that position until elected mayor in 2001. He loved Carol and his family. He loved people and always placed a priority on their safety. Mayor Lowery delivered excellent municipal services, completed major renovations to recreation facilities. Business development thrived, and surrounding subdivisions were annexed, increasing the size and prestige of Florissant. And I remembered him. He was a great guy, very nice. He never met a stranger. I mean, if your face did not look familiar to him in that government building, he took his time and shook your hand and said, "Hey bud, I'm Mayor Robert Lowery. What's your name?" But yeah, he was a great person. And his son Tim has been the mayor of Florissant for at least a few years now. At the time I'm doing this video, he is still the mayor, and like his father, he was also the police chief of Florissant. Here's another notable mayor of Florissant. Now this guy, he was one of the longest serving mayors in the United States, which could be a good or bad thing, but lived from 1926 to 2000, James J. Egan was the first mayor elected under the 1963 charter. During his administration, a new community center and civic center were built. He initiated the LSV program and free bus service for older residents. Proud of his Irish ancestry, he was affectionately referred to as the Jolly Green Giant. Lawyer and judge, he served as mayor for 37 years. Now, I did hear he was referred to as the Jolly Green Giant because of a Kelly green jacket he always was seen wearing, I'm sorry. And like I said, I mean, it could be a good or bad thing that he was one of the longest serving mayors of Florissant. I mean, he wanted to seek higher office in St. Louis County from what I read, but the residents of Florissant said, "No, we want you as our mayor." And from what I heard, he literally died in office of a heart attack, but that's just hearsay. All right, moving on. And here's one of my favorite or most interesting ones. This one is about Rita Ann Mollering, All-American Girls Pro Baseball player. Lived from 1927 to 1992. Rita Meyer, born in Old Town Florissant, oldest of 7 children, member of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League from 1946 to 1949 for the Peoria Red Wings. Played shortstop and pitcher. RBI leader 1948. Nicknamed Slats after Cardinal shortstop Marty Marion. Married Robert Mollering in 1949. Lived in the historic August Albushan House. Supporter of public school sports entire life. 1988, Rita and others from that organization were honored in Cooperstown, New York. The Rita Slats Meyer Mollering Memorial Awards honors women in individual sports. Was depicted in the movie A League of Their Own, which came out the same year she passed away. All right, here's a very interesting one for those who live in the St. Louis area. A lot of you are familiar with that jingle, Johnny Londoff Chevrolet. Well, this one is about Johnny Londoff Sr., family businessman, veteran, philanthropist, and celebrity. Lived from 1924 to 2010. In 1940, John Londoff Sr. founded a motor company with his dad Harry, then joined the Marines in World War II. Famous jingle, Florissant Building and Lawton Scholarships circa 1960. Variety Club Telethon Man of the Year, raised millions for children helped by celebrity friends. His newspaper column promoted citizenship, philanthropy, and community. In 1999, John Londoff Jr. became president of Johnny Londoff Chevrolet, and with his sons continue his father's legacy of customer satisfaction and community service. If you go on YouTube, there is a commercial with Sammy Davis Jr. promoting Johnny Londoff Chevrolet. Here's one that is for those who are into bowling. Dick Weber lived from 1929 to 2005. Dick moved to Florissant in 1955 and opened Dick Weber Lanes in 1971. Founding member and longtime star of the Professional Bowlers Association from 1950s to 1990s. He was a bowling legend and one of the sport's most popular figures. Dick promoted bowling around the world and was a frequent competitor on the ABC broadcasts of PBA events. Along with his son Pete Weber, he is a member of the U.S. Bowling Congress Hall of Fame. He is in the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame and on the St. Louis Walk of Fame. How about that? Here's another mayor. Arthur Bangert, mayor of Florissant from 1938 to 1950. Called the father of modern Florissant, he gave the city piped water, a sewer system, the first city library, and established the planning and zoning, public works, and police departments. He brought financial stability and legally changed the name from St. Ferdinand to Florissant. Okay, interesting. See, I think every city should have these because, you know, again, not many people know a lot about their history. Now, there are a few plaques about police officers are true heroes in blue, and there are some about fallen police officers who were killed in the line of duty or who suffered from major injuries. This one is about Lieutenant J.G. Noser Sr., who lived from 1937 to 2008. On June 20th, 1979, while responding to a bank robbery, the suspect vehicle was seen fleeing. A pursuit ensued to Highway 367 and Highway 67. The suspect got out and shot Lieutenant Noser 8 times. He retired 3 years later from his injuries. He succumbed from complications sustained 29 years earlier and passed away on October 7, 2008. He was a 19-year veteran of the force, was survived by his wife and 4 children. Here's another one about a police officer. Marion D. Rife lived from 1930 to December 28, 1963. Officer Rife served 8 years as a U.S. Marine before joining the Florissant Police Department in 1961. On December 28, 1963, at a store while off duty, informed by 2 employees that a man was attempting to steal cash. He began a struggle with a man who fled on foot. He pursued the man a short distance before suffering a fatal heart attack. Suspect was never identified or apprehended. He was survived by his wife and 3 children. Very sad. And this one is in front of a funeral home. Here's another one about a mayor. Henry F. Koch, born September 2nd, 1921. Died May 21st, 1988. Actually, maybe it's 12th. Something got rubbed out there. But anyway, he was Florissant's first full-time salaried city clerk, serving from 1950 to 1960. In that 10-year period, the population of Florissant increased 921%. Oh man, guys, gotta see that number again. In 1960, he was elected as the first full-time mayor and the last mayor under the 1857 charter. He also spent 10 years with the St. Louis Cardinals as a pitcher. Wow. Now over there in that building is Cordy's Custom Picture Framing and Furniture. And here is a little plaque about Frank B. Cordy and Josephine Cordy. And by the way, married couples or partners or whatever, they can be enshrined together. But Frank and Joe married in 1943 and opened Cordy Hardware and in 1946. Devoted to family and faith, they put a priority on community service with leadership roles in fire department, hospital, chamber, Valley of Flowers, historical preservation, St. Ferdinand Shrine, Knights Rotary, Mary Grove, and others receiving prestigious recognition. Married over 50 years, raising 11 children, their successful hard work and commitment is an example of dedication to inspire future generations of Florissant families. Amen to that. And fittingly in front of Jefferson Street is this plaque, one of two U.S. presidents, Thomas Jefferson, 1743 to 1826. And it says here the 50th anniversary of 1776. But third president of the United States from 1801 to 1809, a principal American founding father and author of the Declaration of Independence. Father of the 1804 Louisiana Purchase that doubled the nation's size, bringing St. Ferdinand de Florissant into the USA, and enabling Missouri to become a state with a capital named in his honor. He used his intellect and eloquence to advance democracy, republicanism, and science. So yeah, even though Thomas Jefferson has never set foot here, I mean, yeah, he deserves a lot of credit. So right in front of the Florissant Valley Memorial Post 4105, fittingly, is this plaque about a guy who was killed in Vietnam, and for many years he was under the tomb of the unknown soldier. And he is currently buried in Jefferson Barracks. Well, I'll just read the plaque. First Lieutenant Michael J. Blassie, Vietnam-era unknown soldier, from 1948 to 1972. Florissant Patriot, graduated Air Force Academy, fighter pilot, 8th Special Ops Squadron, Vietnam, Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross Air Medal. May 11, 1972, his A-37 Dragonfly was shot down during his 138th combat mission. His remains, classified unknown but to God, randomly chosen Vietnam unknown soldier at Arlington with full military honors. Medal of Honor by President Reagan. Advances in DNA identified remains in 1998, and he returned home to Florissant for funeral at St. Dismas, interment at Jefferson Barracks. Now, one of these days I will do an episode at Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery, and I will definitely make his grave a priority. And here's a second one about a United States president. Not surprisingly, Missouri's own Harry S. Truman. It says here, while campaigning for the 1934 state senate race, Harry S. Truman gave a speech at this spot to the residents of the farming community of Florissant. Upon completion of his speech, he visited with shop owners on St. Francis Street. 1945, as we all know, Truman was sworn in as the 33rd president of the United States. So, give it a little perspective. It was right in front of the storefront, and it doesn't look like anything. Oh, it's a hair salon or a barber shop. But yeah, pretty cool that he campaigned literally at this spot. Nice. And now we are approaching a marker from one that I actually had the privilege of getting to know. His name was Judge Timothy W. Kelly Sr., presided over Florissant Municipal Court for over 32 years. I'm sorry, for 32 years, 1979 to 2011, and it was up until his death. He lived from 1947 to 2011. Second son of Florissant Judge John J. Kelly, Tim grew up in Florissant, attending Fatima and St. Thomas Aquinas. He presided over a firm but fair court and was elected 11 times. Tim Kelly inspired troubled young adults to strive to be good citizens and promoted leadership through athletics. Lieutenant Commander Timothy Kelly served in the U.S. Navy JAG Corps Reserve. Now, I've spoken to him a few times, of course, when I was an intern in 2007, and it was he who had the idea of putting together a documentary about the dangers of drunk driving, and it is here on YouTube. I will put the link in the description box, and he's in it. And I had lunch with him a couple times, with him and my what do you call him, my leader, or also my mentor, Carrie Luster. And I'm also friends with Kelly's son Patrick, who has a strong interest in local soccer, St. Louis soccer. But it was his early death was very shocking to many. I mean, he died very young. Here's one that is going to be dedicated pretty soon. Satoko, also known as Sue Mitchell, lived from 1933 to 2020. Satoko Yamamoto was born in Nikko, Japan, married Al Mitchell in 1952, and went by the name Sue. Came to the United States knowing only her husband. They raised 5 children. As a child, taught herself to sew when she lived in Japan. She opened Sue's alteration shop in Old Town Florissant and was there for over 20 years. She had strong ties with the Florissant community and was known for her kindness that built lifelong friends. This is actually going to be dedicated later this month in September of 2023. So, pretty cool that I got to see it. And now we are almost at the light at the end of the tunnel. And as the sign says, the St. Ferdinand Shrine is that way. There's a few more plaques. Here's one that I find to be very interesting. Now, this one was a historian and she made sure that every historic part of Florissant would not be forgotten. Her name was Catherine, or Kay Spring, historic preservationist, lived from 1936 to 2017. Kay dedicated her life working for the city of Florissant with a genuine affection for everyone she met. Kay played key roles in renovating many treasures, including the John B. Myers house and barn, the Archibald house, the log cabin, and the Getmeyer house. She served on numerous committees and volunteered for Historic Florissant Incorporated, Florissant Valley Historical Society, and Old St. Ferdinand Shrine. Kay loved all things Florissant and set a great example for our historic preservation. And a lot of her descendants still live here. Her kids and grandkids all live here in Florissant, for all I know. They were all here at the dedication of the ceremony. That was right here. All right, we are at the end of the line. That is a St. Ferdinand Shrine. I hope to do an episode on that sometime in the future. Maybe even go in. But last is the plaque for Saint Rose Philippine Duchesne, lived from 1769 to 1852. To the Native Americans, she was the woman who always prays. Born in France, she came to Florissant in 1819. Her convent home still stands, and with Old St. Ferdinand Shrine is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. She opened the first school in Florissant for the village children and a boarding school for the daughters of wealthy St. Louis families. In her time, she was described as the foremost educator in the state of Missouri. She was canonized by the Roman Catholic Church in 1988 by Pope John Paul II. And there are a few things named for her and some statues and historical markers about her all over the St. Louis area. One of them I showed you in my video for the Pope John Paul II statue at the Cathedral Basilica. And that, by the way, is a hidden park with a gazebo. All right, I am Jason in Florissant, Missouri. I hope I taught you guys a cool civic lesson, many of them, and a lot of people who helped make Florissant a great place to live. I know, as I mentioned before a lot of times in this video, I did work for the city of Florissant, and the residents here love it. I mean, for most people, it's a bedroom community, or it's a place where they can work and play. And there's plenty of things happening in and around the area, especially the surrounding communities, such as Hazelwood and Ferguson and many others. And if you want to be on this Walk of Fame, definitely show a lot of civic spirit. That's all I gotta say about that. But unfortunately, you may not live to see your name on there, so just saying. All right, I am Jason, right across from the St. Ferdinand Church in Florissant, Missouri. Sign off.